Okay, kiddos, now we are talking about probably the most important algebra skill that we need in geometry. It's solving two-step equations. So when we see equations like this, when we have a term with a variable and a term without a variable on the same side, term without the variable, term with the variable on the same side, it's solving two-step equations. So these are the steps that we're going to do. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. So let's go ahead and start by drawing a line down the equal sign. Okay, so if we're solving, we want to do the same thing to both sides. So the key is we want to isolate the variable term. So let's go ahead and circle the term with the variable in it. So I'm just looking which one has the variable. It's this. So this tells me I'm going to work with this last. Okay, so that means I'm going to work with this next. So I'm going to ask myself, what's the opposite of negative 15? Okay, then I'm going to add 15 there. So if I do that to the left side, I have to do it to the right side. Then I work from left to right. Right, the 3c, only thing I have to do is just bring that down. Okay, these two opposites cancel out. Then if I put this in my calculator, negative 45 plus 15, that's going to give us negative 30. Okay, so we've done that first step. We've added or subtracted to isolate the variable term. Right here, we added. Right, next we're going to multiply or divide to isolate the variable. So right here, when we have the number in front of the variable, we know we're multiplying. So the inverse is going to be dividing. The opposite of 3 being multiplied by 3 is dividing by 3's, right? So then we're going to do the same thing to the left side. Okay, so then working from left to right, the 3's cancel out, right? I bring down my c, and then if I put this in my calculator, negative 30 divided by 3, we're going to get negative 10. Okay, so that's all we have to do. Now we talk about checking the solution. What that means is I'm going to put negative 10. I'm going to find the value of this equation if I put negative 10 in place of c. All right, so let's check. So that would be 3 parentheses negative 10, close it, minus 15 equals negative 45. Okay, well, if we put that in our calculator, negative 10 times 3 gives us negative 30, right? Minus 15 is equal to negative 45. Okay, so if we put that in our calculator, that's what we would find out is that is negative 45. All right, so that's how we do it. All right, so let's take a look at another one. If we see this one right over here, the only difference is has the this one has the variable and the number on the left side. This has the variable and the number term on the right side. So let's just follow the same steps, okay? So we said the first step is you're going to add or subtract to isolate the variable term. So let's go ahead and circle that. Remember, it's a negative 12b. We don't want to forget that. So now we're going to add or subtract, right? Well, that's negative 47. The opposite is plus 47, right? That's what we just asked ourselves, is what the opposite is. We're going to do the same thing on both sides, right? Going from left to right, negative 11 plus 47. We put that in our calculator. That's going to give us positive 36 equals, right? Remember, these opposites cancel out. That's what we were trying to do. And then we're going to bring down our negative 12b, right? So we added or subtracted. Next step is going to multiply or divide, right? This is a common misconception is to think we're subtracting 12, right? But when it's in the front of it, we are multiplying, just like right over here. So the opposite is dividing. We're going to divide that side by negative 12, divide that side by negative 12, right? Going from left to right, if we put that in a calculator, we know it's going to be a negative, right? And it goes in 3 times, right? Then these cancel out, and we just left with b. So our answer is b equals negative 3, right? Let's plug it in and check it. So we're going to say negative 11 equals negative 47 minus 12 times negative 3. Okay, so let's check it. Negative 47. This negative 12 times negative 3 gives us positive 36, and that is equal to negative 11. All right, so that's how we check our work as well. So anytime on a test that we want to check our work to make sure, we would do just like that to make sure that it is correct. All right, so go ahead and go to the first set of problems in your Delta Math before we move on to the next page, which is going to the next level. I want to make sure that you have this already, if you don't already, before we move on to the next page. Okay, so make sure that you did those practices in Delta Math from our previous plays. Now we're going to go to multi-step, so not just two-step, but we're going to do more than that. So we're going to do the same steps, except for we're just adding this first one. We're going to simplify each side by clearing the parentheses and combining like terms. So we don't see any parentheses, but we do see like terms. So let's draw our line down there. So say I was circling 4x. What else could I circle? I could circle positive 6x, right? And then I could also circle that negative 1x, right? So make sure that we type that negative 1 in there so that we know that it's a negative 1x, right? So that's it. So now let me combine those. So I got 4 plus 6 plus negative 1. If I put that in my calculator, I'm going to get positive 9 x's, right? And so I can put a slash to that. Right now I have positive 8. I can just underline that, and then negative 3, right? We're going to make sure it's a negative 3. Now if I combine those, that's going to give me a positive 5 equals 32. Okay, so that was our first step, was that we combined like terms. Next step, we're just going to add or subtract, just like we talked about before. So let's go ahead and circle that variable term like we talked about, right? So that's going to tell us I'm going to work with that last. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Going from left to right, I'm going to bring down my 9x. These opposites cancel out. 32 minus 5 gives me 27, right? And then our next final step, right? We said we're going to multiply or divide. Well, this is multiplying, right? 9 times x. So the opposite is dividing by that same 9, right? So it cancels out. So x equals 3, right? And if we wanted to check our work, we would say 4 times 3 plus 6 times 3 plus 8 minus 3 and see if that equals 32, right? If we put that on a calculator, all we have to do, remember, just like we practiced before, we're going to put that in our calculator and that would equal 32. All right, so this next one, this is the trickiest out of all of these, and we will be working on this in our first couple of assignments in geometry. But the only difference, if we notice, now we have a variable over here and a variable over here. So let's just keep working through the steps. All right, so let's go and draw our line down the equal sign. First step says clear the parentheses. We don't see any parentheses, and combine like terms. Now, one thing is I see the negative 8 here, x, and I see negative 6x here, but I cannot combine those because they are on other sides of the line. So I tried to do this, but could not do that yet, right? So, at all. So we tried, we couldn't do it. Now we're going to add or subtract to isolate the variable term. So you may have to move a term with a variable. So that's what we're going to do now. So what we see is, I see the negative 6x over here, but I want it to move over here, right? So remember, if we cross in this line, I can't just move it. I have to do the opposite, right? So I'm going to add 6x, right? I'm going to add 6x, right? Then going from left to right, negative 8x plus 6x gives me negative 2x. Now I'm going to bring down that plus 5, right? These opposites cancel out. I'm going to bring down my positive 3. Okay, so now if we look at it, this looks like our problems from the other side, right? So now we're just going to go through those next steps. So now we said that we're going to work with this term last, right? So we're going to do the opposite of that, plus 5. So that's going to mean subtracting 5 from both sides. Right? We're going to bring down our negative 2x. These opposites cancel out. And then 3 plus negative 5, right? Or 3 minus 5. We know it's going to be a negative because the negative 5 is larger, and then divide. Bring down that. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 2, right? We said our last step is to multiply or divide, and most always it's going to be divide, as we might have noticed. And x equals, now this one, if you put it in a calculator, we'll notice that what we might have noticed anyways. Anytime we have the same thing on top and the same thing on bottom, the answer is 1. All right, so this is x equals 3, this is x equals 1. And how would we check our answer? Well, we would put 1 in there, right? We would say negative x times 1 plus 5, okay, equals, well, that's negative 8 plus 5, and that's equal to negative 3. Okay, let's do the right side. Negative 6 times 1 plus 3. That gives us negative 6 plus 3. And that also gives us negative 3. Right? So that's how we would check our work. So remember, on the test or the PSAT, we want to check our work. That's how we would do it, is by checking the solution. All right, so that's it. So short lesson today. Make sure that you do these next practices on this. Make sure we have everything today with what we learned today so that we're in great shape for our geometry lessons.